Welcome to Please Me, the award-winning bilingual podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap one empowering conversation at a time. Last week, I spoke with EFT practitioner Sophia Tarini, who talked about how emotional and sexual trauma can get trapped in our bodies if not dealt with, and how EFT can help to clear the baggage we may be carrying around. This was a powerful episode and one worth listening to over and over again, so if you haven't done so already, go back and listen. I'm so thrilled and honored to be nominated for a Fan Favorite Award for the ASN Awards, where I was nominated in 2 categories, Best Educator and Best Educator Website. Please see the show notes to cast your daily vote. I love and appreciate every one of you for your support. Be sure to check out my new column in ASN Magazine as well. See the show notes for the details. Did you know that podcasts rely on listener support to keep bringing you the content you love? For the best way to support the show, join me on Patreon for ad-free listening, early releases, bonus episodes, and exclusive content. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
I think that's claiming ownership of somebody else's sexual identity, which I think is different than the kind of mutual agreement that we have in relationships. Just because you are in a relationship with someone or even married, you don't actually own someone.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have zero sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with zero sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. I'm so excited to welcome Fanny Tristan to the show today. She is a woman's empowerment coach, a trauma therapist, a mom, wife, and daughter of Afro-Peruvian immigrants. She is a retreat leader and is passionate about helping women of color thrive in singlehood. and she is a therapist and helps people after breakups. And we're going to talk about her soul therapy, and which is a wellness collective for single women of color, which I'm excited that you have. So how are you today, Fanny? Welcome to Please Me.
Thank you so much, Eve. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And I was just mentioning pre-show that you're a fellow Latina and a fellow woman of color, and I love supporting my BIPOC sisters. So thank you so much for being on the show today. And so I'm going to jump into a question specifically about how race, class, and culture can impact our singlehood experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think this is a topic I talk about all of the time because I've always seen my clients as not just individuals, but also we're each a part of a system. We're parts of multiple systems, right? And so when you're a woman of color, you are interacting with those systems in different ways, whether it's about different kinds of status, right? Your race, what shade you are within your race, how that oftentimes coincides with the class structure that you're a part of, the kind of privileges that you have, how much of an attractive person you seem, and all of the ways for that reason, and how culturally that status is valued in that culture, whether you're seen as someone of higher stature of value or attractiveness. And so all of those things are interacting in what we think about ourselves and how we interact with the world. And so when you are a single woman of color and you're either single for a while or you're dating or you're even recovering from a breakup, all of these things come up because they're part of the things that we say to ourselves about why things happen the way they do or why we do or do not have certain privileges. So it's all part of the story.
I love that you're looking holistically at your clients, which I too do in my physical therapy practice, although someone may come to me for, say, a condition like painful sex, I'm going to look at so many other aspects of their lives as well and look at them really holistically, what other things are going on in their body, if they have any other diseases. There's so many things that can come into play with how people are affected health-wise. So I love that you're looking really holistically at your clients and looking at all of the impacts that societal pressures, race, gender, all of that can really impact the way that we think about ourselves. And I know that after a breakups are very traumatic. And a lot of times they can really cause our self-esteem to plummet and our confidence to plummet. How do you encourage women who have been through a bad breakup to really reignite their self-esteem and really build their confidence?
Yeah, I think that oftentimes we think of breakups as this huge failure, and it's very easy to fall into a doom spiral about that, right? Because something that we don't recognize breakups as is that it's a form of grief. It's a loss, and it's the kind of loss that we don't take seriously in the grand scheme of things when it comes to loss, right? Because people trivialize breakups, because they trivialize women's feelings, right? And so the way that you move through those feelings in a breakup are often seen as dramatic or just you need to get over it. I know that even growing up, there used to be all sorts of quantifiable formulas, even in magazines, about cut the amount of time the relationship was in half. That's how long you should be taking to get over your breakup. And I'm like, what? After years of clinical work, I'm like, who quantified that? Who set this standard for what grief should look like, how long it should take? And I think it just all contributes to why women just don't feel like they're doing it right, as if there is a right way. And I think that when you really focus on the breakup recovery period and really grow your understanding of how it could be an opportunity, I think that's when women start to see a bit of that light at the end of the tunnel, where they can really reset their mindset as okay, yeah, I am grieving something. There is a loss. There is a lot of validity in how I'm feeling about that loss. transition is hard. Change is hard, especially when you thought your whole life was planned out with this person and now they're not here. And so that is all happening. And it's also an opportunity for you to reset and to rebuild. And so to be able to do that for yourself and really not deal with the noise of, oh, hey, you should be just putting yourself back out there, or now you should lose weight, you're more attractive. All of the terrible things that we hear that women are told about what you do after a breakup, and you can just put that away and say, you know what, actually, this is a time for me to reset and rebuild, and that has everything to do with me. And so I'm going to focus on me, and that's really the journey that I guide a lot of women through.
I love that you're focusing people's attention on themselves, because looking outside of yourselves for the answer, you really have to look within. And so I really appreciate that. And I would love to know, like, what sorts of techniques or what sorts of things do you help your clients with in terms of really reconnecting with themselves? Because I think that during a breakup or after a relationship, and at least for me in my experience, it was a really great time to really focus on me and focus on what was important to me and focus on pleasure, self-pleasure, self-gratification, right? And really trying to give myself time by myself to really masturbate and feel good in my body, because your body is going to carry you through all your future relationships and all of the things you need to do, and you need to feel good in your body. So what sorts of things do you tell your clients or guide your clients through to connect in that way?
Yeah. I have a whole framework that I could talk more at length about later, but it's really this 3-part journey that starts with self. So we talked about that a little bit ago, about really refocusing on yourself. And there are multiple areas of life, really these kind of different buckets of self-care, basically multiple buckets of self-care that really help you tap into all the different identities that are within you, right? Your sexual identity being a big part of it, right? That is something that is completely underutilized for a lot of women, because from a young age, a lot of us are told that that belongs to someone else, right? That our sexual identity doesn't bloom unless like a man comes into our lives, which is just not true, right? Like, you've always been a sexual being because you're a human, right? And that's always something that you've always had the right to tap into, but we were told not to because people are uncomfortable with that, especially women doing that. And so it just lays dormant until we're in a relationship, and it just doesn't have to be that way. And it doesn't have to go away because you're not in a relationship, which is where things like masturbation and just self-pleasure come into. And so when women are coming to me to work together, we're re-engaging with that. What do you like now? What brings you pleasure now? Or have you been spending a lot of time pleasing somebody else or doing things that they thought were comfortable in a sexual relationship with you? So you need to create space for that and really connecting to all of those things, mind, body, and soul. And so spending a lot of time doing that internally, and then being able to level that up to the second part that is more about connecting with other people, right? Now that you have found your way to grounding yourself, then we're going to tap into, okay, what are the skills that now you need to learn about having healthy relationships with other people? And that doesn't necessarily mean just romantic, right? This isn't a program where I'm teaching you ways to date, right? Even though dating can be a part of that, but it's also about, how do you build your community? How do you tap into good friendships? How do you have healthy boundaries with people? All of the things that are important in all types of relationships, familial, romantic, friendship, because in reality, breakups can happen in any of those kinds of forms, right? I personally think that friendship breakups are probably some of the worst ones, right? And so this applies to all of those things, right? If you can really master those skills around how to advocate for yourself, how to communicate effectively and healthy, how to identify some of those red flags around how people will give and take power in ways that can be harmful, that can create cycles, right? You learn a bunch of skills around that. And then the third level being around settling into community. And so having that groundedness in yourself, having a groundedness in your community, and now what are the ways that you give back? And that's why I offer my retreats, so that we can actually go out in the world and practice the things that we've been preaching building those connections together, but also tapping in to supporting women around the world.
And having community within those retreats, which is a beautiful thing. You're actually there with a bunch of other people and can absolutely practice everything that you're talking about. And I love that. And I want to say about masturbation that a lot of times people discount masturbation when they're in a relationship and they don't masturbate and they feel like it's cheating on their partner somehow. And I really think it's really important to continue to have a self gratification practice, even when you are in a relationship. I think that there's the relationship that you have with your partner, if you are in a relationship, and then the relationship, the sexual relationship or sensual relationship that you have with yourself. And they're separate. They don't have to be, they can coincide, they can intermingle, but they are separate. And do you want to just speak on that a little bit? Because I feel like a lot of times men will maybe not necessarily like that their partner is masturbating or vice versa, right? And they think that it's somehow cheating, or even like looking at porn and masturbating and thinking that's inappropriate in a relationship. And I personally disagree. I just want to know your take.
I actually really agree with you, Eve, because when I hear that, and I've definitely heard that before, right? I think about this idea of ownership, right? Like we own our sexual identities, right? And I think that sometimes when people feel a type of way about, oh, you're looking at porn, which means you're looking at other people and you're not supposed to do that, or you're pleasuring yourself without me being the center of the object of your affection, I think that's claiming ownership of somebody else's sexual identity, which I think is different than the kind of mutual agreement that we have in relationships. Just because you are in relationship with someone or even married, you don't actually own someone. I think we really need to undo this mindset that's very much ingrained in patriarchy, that someone owns you, also very much ingrained in race. And when we think about enslavement, right, that someone buys you or they own you. And so they get to be the center of what you need to focus on. And I just don't think that the world works that way. I don't think it needs to work that way anymore. And I think people don't I don't think people necessarily realize what they're doing when they do that. I think that's a little bit more reflected in a personal insecurity of, am I not enough for that person? Right? Than it being about, I own them. I don't think a lot of people who would feel this way would say, I own them, so they shouldn't be thinking of it that way. But I do think that it is tapping into an insecurity about being enough for your partner. And I think that also comes from this idea of, do you expect to be everything for your partner?
I love that you brought that up, because when you put all of your expectation onto another person as being everything and checking off every single box and being your all-encompassing happiness in another person, you are really missing an opportunity to have happiness in your own life. Looking outside of yourself is not going to make you happy. You have to find happiness within. So I love that you brought that up. And masturbation is one of those things that I really feel strongly is something that we need to do in order to really learn about who we are sensually and sexually as women, so that we can actually get our needs met in relationships or not, or on our own. And unless you know how to bring yourself to climax, you will never be able to bring yourself to climax in a relationship, in a partnered relationship, because you have to know the steps to get there, right? And if you can't translate that, take that information and translate it to a relationship, you're never going to get your needs met. Do you want to just jump in and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I agree, because our sexual identities are ours, right? I think that there is this expectation that other people are supposed to know your body, but you're the expert in your body.
Right.
You always have been. And so if you're the expert in your body, and I think this goes both ways, right? This idea that someone else is supposed to completely satisfy you, right? But this idea of other people don't have a manual for you, right? Not every woman's body is the same. Not every vagina is the same. And so why are we expecting people to know exactly what's going to work, right? I think that's sometimes, and I don't know if this continues to be rhetoric because I'm not part of the manosphere of any sort, but I remember growing up in these older teen movies and American Pie and all these kinds of movies where there's like an instruction guide about how to have oral sex with women. And it's what? Like that, not one thing works for everyone. I think it's important to understand anatomy and understanding how these things work so that you know what you're stimulating and why. But the actual nitty gritty of how you're going to get a woman into climax is very personalized, and there's no guidebook for that. And so either you have this expectation that your partner is going to know that already, which I don't know if is a very fair expectation, or you have to tell them, you have to communicate what you like. And that's actually seen as a value add for your partner and not a, oh, why do you like it's some kind of ego attack for you to tell your partner what you need. I think that's a big red flag if your partner is going to be turned off by the fact that you know exactly what you need to experience pleasure, because then they are no longer centering you in this kind of sexual experience with each other, which I think is a requirement. If you're gonna engage with someone sexually, like it can't just be about their pleasure.
Absolutely. I love that you say that it's a value add. And I definitely find that when looking for relationships, and we're going to talk about singlehood, right? And when you are in your singleness looking for relationships, you should be looking for people who are going to view it as a value add and not as something that is negative in any way. And like you said, looking for those red flags, not ignoring those red flags, not making excuses for people that you may deem to be someone that you want to move forward with in terms of sexuality and have sex with them, and looking for people that are going to really be open to that communication so that you can get your needs met. And that brings me to my next question about having a happy and healthy hoe season. And I know we talked about this before. And first, let me just let you define what that means, and then we can jump into it some more.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up because I feel like people don't give themselves a permission to have a hoe season. And what I mean by hoe season is a period of time in which you are unapologetically wanting to be in your sexual identity, that part of your identity. And so you have been able to relinquish shame. You are unapologetic about wanting to explore what brings you pleasure, to explore new things, and that you're not going to be held back by any expectations that don't align with your values in your identity, in your holistic identity. And so it's a very empowering time. Oftentimes, the point where women get to when, or honestly, I don't even think that's gendered, but it's really a point in which someone gets to where they've had a breakup or they've been single for a while and just haven't been in touch with their sexual identity. And now they're really into it. And now they're like, okay, the door is open and we're going to have some fun. And then they follow suit through their behavior. And so I think something that I really enjoy talking about with clients is about how do we do this in a way that makes you feel safe, right? Because what makes it feel safe will make you feel happy and is actually the things that are going to help you grow and remain empowered. And so that is talking about sexual health. That is talking about what are things that make us feel physically and emotionally safe in our hoe season. And that's different for everybody. And so being able to think about what are some of those general things that I want to think about as I prepare, because I know I'm from New York City. I feel like a New York summer is almost like a brand in and of itself, because we will just be outside all the time, half naked with our iced coffees, just getting through the city of almost 9 million people. Everyone's outside. We're all sweaty. And I think it's just a big party town in the middle of summer. And so I think when the weather gets warm here, when it turns into June, we've been hibernating. People are just, there's a lust for life. There's a lot of parties. New York has a very lively party scene. And we start talking about, okay, how are we going to have fun? Are we going to tap into this part of ourselves that was a little dormant because either we had a little snuggle bunny that didn't work out because we met during cupping season and we knew they weren't it, right? Or maybe we were on our own and really hibernating. And so how do I clear the cobwebs and start feeling a little bit more pleasure? That's how I define a host season, with the idea that by the end of it, if there even is an end to it, that you can feel like you know yourself sexually, which really primes you for the kind of relationships that you want to have intimately in the future.
I definitely think it's a great learning experience to really learn yourself. And I like to call this getting on the road to sexual liberation. And the way that I define it is by gaining the confidence that you have in your sexuality, which I call big clit energy. And we have very similar concepts defined slightly differently just by semantics and words. I really try and encourage women to get that big clit energy, to really hone their sexual lives and really own their pleasure, because there's nothing more empowering than owning your pleasure and knowing what makes you feel good and being able to share that with somebody else. I think it's so important. And when you talk about ending your hoe season, right? For me, it's like, how could you ever end that, right? Because this is like your path to sexual liberation, which is going to keep going and going, right? Throughout all of the different phases of your life. And learning that confidence or that big clit energy is something that you're going to take through all of your relationships, whether they be sexual relationships or even business relationships or friendships. When you have confidence, it translates to all areas of your life. I personally think that having a healthy and happy hoe season is like the same as getting on the road to sexual liberation, right? And how do we maintain that throughout our lives, whether we're single or not?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And I even wonder if having that hoe season is something that just evolves and just looks different throughout your life, because as humans, we will continue to grow and evolve.
Absolutely. And I personally am the type of person that, although I do love dirty talk, I don't like words like hoe or slut or bitch. I don't like those words. To me, they're derogatory. Some women embrace them, just like the N word has been embraced by the Black community. So has whore, and within like the sex worker community, they all are calling themselves whores and all of that, which I understand just for myself. And maybe it's because I'm a little bit older and those words just don't feel right to me, that I personally don't love those words associated with me, but I can understand how other people may embrace those words and find empowerment in them. Do you want to just jump in and say something about that? Because I think words are powerful. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think language is very powerful. And I think that because they are powerful, they can go both ways, right? They can remain harmful to someone, whereas it can be something to be flipped and used as a tool of empowerment for another. I think almost like the N-word, where when I think of host season, I actually spell it HEAUX, which is the modern way in which a lot of people have spelled it, like how people have repurposed the spelling of the N-word, right? And so I think that has been a revival that I've really appreciated, because it almost feels like a different word, because it's spelled differently from the way that I remember it being spelled growing up and how it was mentioned in lyrics in the 90s and prior. I think that it's to each their own. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think that it's also just a reminder that people just have different preferences. And so, yeah, if you are engaging in dirty talk, if you are trying to make a sexual connection with someone, you have to learn how to speak their language, right?
I think that's a great point. And everybody has their own comfort level. And when you are entering in a new relationship, you have to really pay attention to what the other person likes and doesn't like. And all of that is all about communication, whether they like those words. But sometimes they'll say, I want you to call me this. It turns me on. Other people will say the opposite. So really communication, bottom line is communication is key. and also boundaries around sexuality. Do you want to just jump in and talk about boundaries and how we can create boundaries around sexuality? ASN Lifestyle Magazine is your go-to source for sex-positive, sophisticated content covering everything from the swinger lifestyle and adult entertainment to intimacy, wellness, and more. You can read every digital issue for free, and subscribers get access to exclusive content. See the show notes for the link to subscribe and check out their Instagram. I'm excited to share that I now have a monthly column in ASN called Big Clit Energy, a Please Me series. Don't miss it and subscribe today.
At Sephora, we've got what you want because you're obsessed with your skin and we're obsessed with what it needs. Sephora has the best products to help you get beautiful, glowing, radiant skin. With an extensive, inclusive range of results-driven formulas and in-store beauty advisors to help you find exactly which are right for you, the best skincare is only at Sephora. Sephora, for all your skincare.
Vacations will never be the same. Welcome to the theme parks of Universal Orlando Resort. With spectacular hotels and more, Universal Orlando offers an entire week of vacation awesome. Visit universalorlando.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
Revolutionize your cooking with the Tefal Infrared Air Fryer. Watch as your food crisps up through a large lighted window and delight in faster, crispier, and juicier results with no preheating thanks to Tefal's advanced infrared technology. Discover the future of cooking and bring innovation into your kitchen by visiting Tefal.com.
Oh, the sick day struggle is real. But with Dimetapp, it doesn't have to be. Children's Dimetapp works quickly to soothe multiple bothersome cough, cold, and allergy symptoms in a single dose. Our fast-acting formulas are designed with kids in mind, so they get everything they need and nothing they don't. Available in liquid and on-the-go chewable tablets. Tap the banner now to shop at Amazon and say goodbye to the sick day struggle with Dimetapp. Use as directed.
Yeah, I think that there's so many ways. I think first and foremost, consent. I think that's like the biggest boundary of all. Something that I say to clients often, especially when they really start working with me, is this idea of understanding kind of what you're worth. And I think we talked a little bit earlier about this idea of owning someone, right? And I think that ties into the consent conversation as well, because if you walk around expecting sex, I think that's not really a great thing. I think even though we as humans are all deserving of sexual pleasure, I also think that we are all very lucky to meet someone who wants to enthusiastically, consensually want to have sex with us, right? I don't care who you are. You could have an Academy Award. You could have a Grammy. You could be an Olympian. I don't care who you are. You're lucky to meet someone that wants to have sex with you, period. No one owes it to you at all. It is something that you have a right to embrace, but to do that with someone else is something that you need to ask permission for. And so first and foremost, people need to know that is something that should be required of you and something that you should be able to claim, right? You should be able to advocate for that. And if someone thinks that's weird, then they need to work on their emotional intelligence. They're not there emotionally to be able to be connecting with you sexually. And to me, that's a turnoff. And I think that's something that we should be teaching girls. I think oftentimes we keep saying, especially to girls, about how much they need to protect themselves. And very little attention is given to teaching boys about consent. And I think especially as they grow up, I think that translates into this, oh, he bought me a drink, or we were flirting, or we got drinks back at my place. And so there's this idea that once you've creaked this door open because you're interested and you want to know more, that means that door has flung open and you can never close it again. And that was a choice that you made. And so you need to live the consequences of that choice. And it's just not that black and white. And so you have to be able to understand the language. You need to be able to have the emotional intelligence to recognize body language. What does it mean when they don't want to make eye contact with you, right? You should maybe stop and think, is this okay, right? Because the person's looking away, or they seem to have tensed up their body, right? Are you in tune enough with your own body? And is your sexual partner in tune with your body enough to understand, oh, the vibe is off now? Or, oh, I might have said something because they stopped engaging, right? And they may seem like these little subtle things, but I think they can be very obvious to someone that knows how to be present in their body. And so I think we all need to be learning how to do that. So I feel like I went on a tangent because that was more than just talking about boundaries.
No,
I think it's the number one boundary.
Number one boundary, you're absolutely right, is consent. And not just consent one time, but consent throughout the whole entire experience. And at any time, that consent can be revoked, okay? If you're not feeling comfortable, if you're not feeling the vibe, if you're starting to feel pain or whatever that may be, you can always get up and say, hey, I need a break, or this isn't feeling right, or I think this is the end of our experience right now, and I'm calling it. We're stopping. And feeling confident in yourself to do that and to create that boundary for yourself, because it's so important for women to understand that no matter what happens prior, and even if you did initially get consent, that nobody has the right to have sex with you unless you are consenting throughout the whole entire experience. So thank you for really going off on that tangent about consent, because I think it's so important for people to understand. And boys, you're right, to really learn as well as when they're growing up. Yes, girls need to protect themselves. Boys also need to protect themselves. Girls need to consent. Boys also need to consent, and throughout the entire experience. I think that was a great example. I want to jump into our role play because we're already there. So I am going to be your client, and I'm going to be entering into singlehood, and you're going to be my therapist, and we're going to just go off of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Action.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what you feel like you're struggling right now with?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you because I recently got divorced, and I am just feeling really down about the experience of divorce. I really feel like it was a failure. It was something that I had really wanted to do, and it didn't work out. And now I'm on the other side of it, really feeling like a failure in love. And I just want to develop like a love practice for myself to really fill my heart again. I just feel like I'm so empty right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned love, Eve, because love is abundant, right? It's not something that just ends because a relationship ends. And I think that it's a real strength of yours to be able to recognize that it's something that you're still deserving of and that you're still willing to work towards. So I think you're already on your way towards that, right? Towards attracting that love. And when we talk about love and loving other people, and you mentioned talking about a self-love practice, can you tell me about the different ways in which you already have that set up in your life, whether it's just different parts of your identity or certain people or certain tools that you have in your life that help you do that right now?
Yeah, so I like to exercise and I like to take care of myself. I eat healthy. So I feel like all of those things nurture myself and the love that I have for myself. I also just feel like I need to go through like a sexual empowerment, if you will, and just explore, because I was in a relationship with someone who it was a sexless relationship for many years. And I just don't ever want that to happen to me again. And I really want to hone my sexuality and to really make that an important aspect of my life, because it always really has been, but I ignored it for many years because I was in a relationship with someone who was not having sex with me. So that's where I'm at right now.
Do you feel like you have a pretty good grasp on what actually turns you on?
I think I do. I think I do, but I also feel like I've been blinded in certain ways about my attraction to women. And it's something that I had never really explored prior to my marriage. But since my divorce, I've found that my attraction to women has become something that I'm seeking more. And it's interesting. And I am trying to understand what's going on with me. Yes, I find myself attracted to men, but now I'm finding myself more attracted to women.
Yeah. And I think that's a really wonderful discovery because our feelings are information. And so we want to use that as a launching pad for you to explore whatever it is that is piquing your interest. All of that is really good information. So even though you've had this interest, how does it make you feel to have this interest?
I feel like with a woman, it's just so much easier to become emotionally connected to them than with a man. I just feel my girlfriends have always been super close to me. I've told them everything about my life. And in relationships with men, I've never really felt that sort of freedom to really share 100% of who I am. And so that is what's attracting me to the idea of seeking relationships or experiences. Let's just put it that way, experiences with other women. And I'm not really sure if I'm really ready for a relationship at this point, but I want to put myself out there and still have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And it's also really important for you to know where you're at in terms of your comfort level of what you're willing to try, right? Because that's different for everybody. And I think that the first step in figuring that out is education, right? Really making sure that you feel like you're making an educated and informed decision on something that you would like to try, so that you can feel like you're in control and you know exactly what it is that you are seeking and that you can change your mind at any moment, right? These aren't contracts. And I think we can start with really talking about that blind spot on a more educational level and seeing, do you really know much about what it is to date a woman? And is there a lot more gray area than we might be thinking?
Yes, I think that is where I'm at in terms of being clueless, because I've never had the experience before. And so learning that is where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And how would you describe your connection and exposure to the queer community?
And seen. Okay, so that was really fun. We could definitely go on and on. I could talk to you all about my experiences in that community. And I think that could be a whole nother conversation, but we are running out of time. So I want to make sure that my listeners can find you. Where can we find you?
Yes. So you can find me at hersoulsupply.com. That's my website. I have some freebies on there for folks if they're interested. I have a free guide on combating loneliness in your single era. I also have a free guide on how to build trust again and make new connections with people. And so you can head over there to get some freebies, and I'll share a special link for your listeners as well. And you can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Her Soul Supply.
Amazing. So check her out there. And I wanted to also ask you about your Single, Empowered, and Free webinar that you're going to be doing as well.
Yes, thank you for asking, Eve. I do have a live webinar. It's called Single, Empowered, and Free. And it is a live call where we talk about all of the systems that I was talking about a little bit earlier, about all the systems that really contribute to why we're feeling this scarcity as single women of a certain age. Because we talk about concepts around the patriarchy, around the marriage industrial complex. We'll talk about machismo culture, and we talk about racism, beauty standards, and all of these systems that we're a part of that contribute to the feeling of loss and scarcity that we feel as single women, and talking about ways that we can address that, right? As I mentioned before in our role play, that things start with education, right? And this is really a launching pad for anyone who might be feeling a bit lost or don't really know where to start or feeling overwhelmed either right after a breakup or just being single for a while and feeling like something's off or they're not doing it right, if there is a right. And so this live webinar is a chance for us to get together and talk about all of the systems, all the things that I've learned, even throughout my own personal journey and also in my clinical work as a social worker. So I think that it's a great opportunity to learn and to also reflect and to also be in community with other women who may be going through the similar thing and be able to really find a safe place to share some of those stories. And so that is something that I do run periodically, and I will be having a live call on April 28th, and I usually have around 2 a month. And so you can always check out when the next one is on hersoulsupply.com, or people can join my newsletter to find out when the next one is.
Fantastic. And I think that sounds like a wealth of information for really anybody, whether you're single or not, to have in your mind and understand, because the systems really do cause us to have issues and we need to figure out what those systems are so that we can get rid of all of the stuff that doesn't serve us. So I appreciate that you break it down system by system to really show us that we are whole and we are perfect in our own way as we are. And so I love that is something that you teach people. I think it's very useful information. So I just want to make sure that if you're listening to the show right now and you loved listening to this show as much as I loved recording it, that you go ahead and you copy and paste it and you share it with a friend right now. Share it and make sure that if you're listening to the show, you also leave a review. Reviews are the way that podcasts grow. I appreciate everybody out there listening. And if you need to reach me, you can reach me on pleaseme.online. You can send me a message. Please fill out my questionnaire and ask me any questions so that I can answer them on the show. Again, Fanny, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Eve. This was such a pleasurable conversation.
Until next time, for ad-free listening, exclusive bonus episodes, Eve's library of archived webinars, and early access to new releases of Please Me, become a monthly supporter on Patreon. Simply open the Patreon app on your phone, search for Please Me, and subscribe today for premium content and more. Cheers to finding your pleasure and big lit energy.